The last of our 6 bad investor archetypes is what I call the Buzzword Butterfly. And the Buzzword Butterfly is also, I guess, a type of midwit, but they're the opposite type of midwit. They believe too much in whatever is peaking on the hype cycle. The Buzzword Butterfly was that investor who used to be all in on crypto, and then they woke up one morning and they were all in on AI. Again, not that there's anything wrong with being heavily into crypto or heavily into AI or having an investment thesis, but that's exactly the point. These folks do not have any sort of concrete investment thesis beyond this thing is what everybody is talking about right now, and so I'm going to invest in it. These folks, they don't really understand the difference between what will make a startup successful or unsuccessful. And in the same way that I criticize the midwit for being too focused on business metrics and whatnot, I think this type of person, the Buzzword Butterfly, is really just looking for you to check off a bunch of buzzwords on their bingo sheet, right? Where you're like, okay, are you your Web3, crypto, AI, cloud, whatever it is? And they're not thinking, are they building a product that customers will love? Are they the right team to be doing it? Do they have a proper distribution strategy? Do they have any traction? No. They're just looking for the buzzwords. And these folks, I think the main harm they cause is to their investors, to their LPs, honestly. But they also have a secondary negative effect of distorting the market, because then they basically create skewed incentives for founders to be buzzword compliant. For example, how are you wedging AI into your app rather than focusing on actually solving the problem, solving that pain point, and then creating something scalable out of that is really generating value for people?
Yaniv, the thing that all of these have in common is that you have to recognize something. That VCs, while they appear to be kind of higher up in the hierarchy than founders, they appear to be these kind of kingmakers, these very important nodes in the network. They have a lot of advantages over founders. They have lots of data points. They get to meet with a lot of founders. They get to see a lot of companies. They get to pattern match. They're multi-move players, so they get to invest in multiple companies instead of just one company. They have access to what is, perceived to be and is often a scarce resource, money. And so, there's a lot of reasons to admire and to be concerned about the concerns of VCs. But the reality is these guys are basically business owners, just like you. They've started a firm, or they're employees at a firm. They themselves are raising capital from LPs. They're hustling and struggling and pitching just the same way you are. And they're typically not that much cleverer than the better founder. They're just trying to figure out the future and figure out the world just like you. This means that there are really dumb VCs, there are really average VCs, and then there are very, very good VCs, the same way there are dumb founders, average founders, and great founders. And so, this is another way, amongst the other 5 ways that we've listed, that VCs can really reveal their midwitness and really be doing a bad job at their business, which is, spotting talent, spotting companies, and betting on winners. The other thing I'll say about Buzzword Butterfly is a lot of VCs, actually, even the smart money, are pretty sheep-like. They tend to follow the crowd and the trends. Part of that is the limits of their understanding. They're not brilliant, they're not clever, as I just described. They're not domain experts. But part of it is also rational and clever in the sense that they know everybody else is doing that. And so if you're investing at seed, you need to be able to get your company to Series A. And they know that all the Series A investors are following the trends and are, in this case, at this moment, looking for AI startups as well. And so they're not going to go invest in some crypto company or in some two-sided marketplace or some social media thing when everybody in the ecosystem is investing in AI. Partly it's lazy, partly it's they don't know any better, and partly it's rational because they need to get you to the next round. And the next round is likely from an investor who is also playing this buzzword game.
It's all fair, right? I think really the aim of this episode, Chris, is firstly to have a bit of fun, right? But secondly, to allow founders to recognize the different types of investor they might come across. By the way, there are a lot of great investors, but there are these archetypes of investors who harm their firms and often harm founders as well. You want to be alive to these different archetypes so that you can avoid them or at least manage them appropriately so that you're not blindsided or surprised by that. But of course, everything you say is correct. One of my favorite laws is called Sturgeon's Law, and it basically goes 90% of everything is crap. So no matter what category you're in, founders, startups, investors, fruit, I don't know, look around you. 90% of it is crap. There's only 10% of it that's any good. And so this is not a criticism of VC as a sector any more than it's a criticism of anything else. But be aware that when you're raising capital, to your point, Chris, you don't want to revere your investors. You have to realize there are some very, very good investors. There are some mediocre investors. There are a whole lot of bad investors. And you need to be able to recognize the signs, because getting good investors is a huge advantage to you in building the startup the way you want it and to reach the sort of outcomes that you are hoping to achieve.
And one way to figure out if they're a great investor is to look out if they're doing any of these obviously bad archetypal things. Also is to reference check them. Go talk to their startup portfolio, to their founders, reach out to them directly or ask for an introduction. And if they're hesitant to do that or making excuses, that's also another yellow flag for you to consider.